Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is a brand new edition of the Third and Lang podcast. Yes, I'm hoping to get my front tooth. Certainly, hopefully, way before Christmas. But yeah, it's been an interesting week to say the least. And without any further ado, we will bring in the man, the myth, the legend, the one, Mr. Coach Matt Lang joins us. And Matt, welcome back. And yeah, another good week of IHSA football, some interesting games and results and some really good matchups to look forward to this week. And yeah, we're kind of in that groove. We're getting closer and closer to playoffs. We're entering week 6 and a lot already played and a lot to look forward to as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about tonight because I think as we get to the end of the year, it's crazy. We're in week 6 and it's really hard to fathom that it's going by that fast, and we're getting into some really big games. There are going to be some neat things that are going to happen, as we get into week 6 and we're playing week 6, week 7, 8, and 9. It's going to be right there. So we're completing the middle third of the season already, which is just hard to believe.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about how some of these things are going to formulate in all the classes because there's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, it hit me early in the week. I was writing something and just said week 6. I'm like, wait a minute, week 6? We're in week 6 already? Man, it just flies by. But again, you can feel the weather changing as well. I mean, we've gotten some rain up here, which for a while was pretty much needed. Now it's like we're almost in abundance of rain all of a sudden. So that's fall in Illinois. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's getting cooler down here. We've had some rain, some pop-up showers. I think for the most part, though, we really haven't had any.
No, we've been lucky.
We haven't had any rain delays. We haven't had anything to worry about. Yeah, knock on wood. And but you never know what could happen here. As we get into these.
Right.
As we get closer to Halloween.
We're gonna get something. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. So. And usually the longer it takes, the worse it gets when it hits. So that's been my experience.
Yeah. And well, it's going to be interesting too, a lot of the schools, especially down here, our show, basically we are talking about 1A through 4A, more teams than especially 3A and 4A have turf fields. Your 1As and your 2As are starting to get them in our area down here. Everybody is, taking care of their field, whether it's turf or whether it's they got a lot of grass seed growing and they're protecting their stuff because they know it's a calm before the storm. The nasty stuff is coming.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, well, we're going to start. We'll go through 1A through 4A, and then we'll cover some 8-man as well. Got a little special something for you people in 8-man football. Little unique announcement heard here first on the Third and Lang podcast. Don't go anywhere.
Exactly. This is breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
On the Third and Lang podcast. So we are going to start in 1A, Matt. And again, I am using the Class 1A Associated Press rankings for week 6. So let's go through it. Not a lot of change. That's going to be the theme here, my friend. A little bit of movement here and there within the 4 classes, but not a ton. It's that settling in period we're running into right now. I think your contenders are really starting to rise up to the occasion, and certainly the class in 1A. So 1A top 10, Lena Winslow, of course, at number 1. Forston at 2, Camp Point Central at 3, Morrison at 4, Greenfield Northwest at 5, Althoff Catholic at 6, Sterling Newman Central Catholic at 7, Carrollton at 8, Fulton at 9, and Kewanee, Anawan, Weathersfield at 10. Dropping out, actually, Matt, is Hope Academy. Just a matter of points. Hope Academy won a 1-0 forfeit. Unfortunately, Chicago Christian this year, Matt, has been forfeiting a handful of games here and there. I know it seems like they're kind of struggling with injuries and numbers and what have you. So unfortunately for Hope, they ended up having to take a forfeit over Chicago Christian. But for some reason they dropped out. But they did get other votes, others receiving votes in 1A. Aurora Christian, Stark County, Hope Academy, Casey Westfield, Leroy, Cesar Valor, Salt Fork, and St. Bede. So plenty getting votes. Just anything sticks out to you in 1A?
Well, I think, as we start looking at 1A, things are starting to formulate. So, I'll talk more about this later in the newly named part of my show when we talk about all 4 classes, and I'll save that name for later. But what we have is things are really starting to kind of settle in. The foundation's settling in. In the north, we're going to have a collision course in week 9 between Lena and Forreston. In the middle of the state, over on the western side, as we dip down into the St. Louis area and over in the Quincy area, you basically have 4 teams. You have Camp Point Central, you have Carrollton, you have probably West Central, and you have Belleville, Althoff, and Greenville. So those guys are starting to flex their muscles and really establish, put their feet in the dirt. And then in the heart of Illinois, kind of in that central Illinois, over here by Champaign, you're starting to get some teams, Hayworth, Leroy, Gibson City, those type of teams. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Those are 1A teams, and so it's. I think north and south is pretty easy to divide what we have because of the NUIC, but I think things are starting to kind of take shape and form down here in the south.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt about it. So again, that is 1A for this week. We'll go to Class 2A. Again, this is Associated Press Top 10. Maroa Forsyth at 1, Tri-Valley at 2, Seneca at 3, Bloomington Central Catholic at 4, Knoxville at 5, Johnston City at 6, Shelbyville at 7, Athens at 8, Rock Ridge at 9, and Momence is new in at number 10. Momence gets in. They had a 21-7 win over Iroquois West last week. Out is Bismarck Henning, who was previously ranked 10. They lost a close one, 14-13 to Salt Fork. So, Matt, there again, not a whole lot of change there. Other receiving votes include Farmington, Marion Central Catholic, Westville, Nashville, Breeze Mater Dei, Arthur, Lovington, Atwood, Hammond also getting a vote in the 2A poll. Anything stick out there?
Well, we'll talk about some of these teams, and I won't spoil the surprise for our listeners, but some of the names that you talked about, I'll talk a little bit later. Farmington was in a situation where they had a really tough game against Elmwood, probably a little bit closer than people anticipated. There's going to be some really interesting games, I think, in 2A. 2A, you're going to have a 2A giant, Maroa Forsyth. They're going to be tested this week. They're going to Olympia. That was a great game last year at Maroa, where Olympia kind of came up short. So that's going to be interesting. Bismarck Henning lost a really, really, really close game in a defensive battle against a Salt Fork team that I'll talk about. And then there's a couple other storylines that I'll save till later in the show. Some sleepers and some teams that are lurking in 2A that I think will be really interesting to see kind of how that unfolds. But 2A has a lot of potential. And, be interesting to see kind of down the road, like the Bloomington Central Catholics, if they are going to go 3A or if they'll dip down
right
to 2A. And we'll see about a couple other teams that I'll talk about too.
Yeah, I think maybe next week we'll dig into that a little bit and try to pick out some teams that are going to kind of be bubbly teams in the smaller classes and see how that can impact some things. Let's go to Class 3A. We'll move on to Class 3A. Again, these are the Associated Press rankings, top 10 for Class 3A this week. Again, very little change. Just one team in, one team out this week. Byron remains the number 1 team in 3A. Montini Catholic at 2. Princeton at 3. Wilmington at 4. St. Joe Ogden at 5. Olympia, as Matt mentioned, is in at 6. Dupec at 7. Roxana at 8. Williamsville at 9. And in this week at number 10, we've talked about them early in the year, Matt. The DuQuoin Indians are in 5-0. DuQuoin gets a lopsided win over Pinckneyville last week, 61-16. Wow. That's putting it on Pinckneyville for sure. And then out, unfortunately, Tolono Unity lost 42-14 to Bloomington Central Catholic, Matt. So there you go in Class 3A.
3A continues to get strong. Again, some of my storylines we'll talk about, just some really good teams that are starting to kind of develop. But the teams that I'll talk about, we don't know whether they're going to go north or they're going to go south as we get into week 10. DuQuoin, I'm going to talk about them a little bit later. They have an incredible pride and storied football tradition down in DuQuoin. You obviously went to college down in that area. My only experience with DuQuoin is driving down there to go to the Rich Heron basketball camp at Carbondale, and I drive through DuQuoin during the DuQuoin Fair, and I was like flabbergasted at the passion that these people have for everything they do. So watch out for them. We'll talk about them a little bit later. 3A is going to be a lot of fun, and with IC moving up to 4A, 3A might be a little bit more open this year. We'll see what's going to happen. What happens in the north and in the south.
So did you go to the Rich Heron basketball camp?
I worked for Rich Heron, the SIU basketball camp.
Nice.
I talked to Ron Heron. I called him up on the phone.
Yeah.
And my best story about that was I was living in Galesburg, Illinois, and Rich Heron was up there. They were playing Bradley, and he came over to watch a player that he was recruiting out of Rock Island. And I went right up to him and started talking to him because I was young and dumb and full of bubble gum and working these basketball camps and felt like that was my journey in life as I was going to work basketball camps. And Rich Heron put his arm around me and said, "Hey, big guy," he's like, "you need to call my brother and see if you can come down and work our camps." And so you found out real quick that if Rich Heron called you big guy, you were in good shape. You were in good shape. So I went through DuQuoin in the summer, and I couldn't believe all the trucks and all the atmosphere. And I was like, "What the heck's going on down?" And there's like, "Well, we got a fair going on down here. Is what's going on."
Yeah.
So they take a lot of pride in their football. One of the best 3A games I ever seen was Illini West winning a incredible football game against DuQuoin in the state championship game at Memorial Stadium a few years ago. And so DuQuoin has a lot of pride, a lot of passion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's move on to Class 4A. Class 4A, Matt, not a damn thing changed in 4A. Absolutely the same from the week before. Rochester remains your number one team. IC Catholic Prep at 2, Morris at 3, Richmond Burton 4. Matt, as we mentioned before, huge showdown between those two in Morris Friday night. By the way, folks, it's Cornfest in Morris besides the big game. So just thought I'd share that with you. Rockford Boylan in at number 5, Mount Zion at 6, Carterville at 7, Murfreesboro at 8, Geneseo at 9, and St. Lawrence at 10. Others receiving votes in 4A include Coal City, Wheaton Academy, Dixon, and Breeze Central. Matt, 4A is pretty damn good.
It's very good. And now that you have IC in the picture, I think it's going to be just really neat. We're looking for that collision course to happen. We'll see what else happens. I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 teams that, we're going to have a front runner. We're going to have a sleeper, and we're going to have a team that's lurking. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 4A. So everybody's getting better. 3A and 4A are both ferocious entities in themselves. Yeah. And 4A, really nothing's changed. The cream is rising to the top.
I mentioned kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek about Cornfest being in Morris. It's a huge deal. I think it started tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday, so it starts tonight. It ends Sunday. You mentioned DuQuoin, the state fair that they have down in DuQuoin. I mean, Morris's Cornfest overtakes the entire downtown of Morris. It's a big deal. It's been a big deal every year, and we already know how big football is, and you mix in football with Cornfest. It's a huge, huge weekend in Morris.
Would you be in the parade? Would they ask you to be in the parade?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't because I'm just too cool. But, I would.
Do they have an edgy staff in Morris?
Love fans in Morris. Morris has been one of the best football communities for me since I've been doing this. It's great to live. It's great to live 5 minutes from there because, again, it's just, and I could go through the state and point out the football towns, Geneseo, Metamora. You mentioned DuQuoin. I think Nashville is one of those as well down in Southern Illinois. Marion. I mean, you go up and down the state, and Morris is one of those towns that is just high school football crazy, and that's why we love them. But it's 4A has been as stable as any class. And again, you see some of these matchups. I know Boylan I believe they're hosting Hononegah Friday. That's a huge game in the Nick 10. I know Carterville has played well. They've got a couple of big games coming up. Mount Zion, I know, has got a couple of big games coming up. Geneseo plays Quincy in week 7 or
at Quincy.
I might be in the Quad Cities that week. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Not that I've planned these things out. It might work out that way.
Yep. You'll have to make the journey because Quincy's a little bit farther over. That's
I know where I'm going.
I know. I'm just reminding you. I will say this. That Hononegah Boylan game, those two teams right there, and I can just tell you from my time with Jim Morrow and Brian Benning, they created a very good football program at McChesney Park, Harlan. And it was always a point of emphasis.
Those are the two big teams.
Those are the two big ones because you're right down the road from Hononegah, and obviously Boylan is Boylan. And I can tell you right now, with these two teams, they look at each other as the measuring sticks in the Nick 10.
Yep.
And this is a huge game with huge ramifications. Obviously, Boylan sent a message to Auburn, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that game unfolds.
Yeah,
Zimmerman's done a great job at Hononegah.
Yep, no doubt about it. Mentioned Geneseo, St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence takes on Bennett, and that could be a big game for both trying to get a leg up. So yeah, it's that time of year where you're gonna see how good these teams really are in 4A with some great matchups. But I think they'll stand pat. I think they'll wind up being pretty good. Cannot forget about our friends over in 8-Man Football. Need to talk about them. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a little breaking news special announcement for you. Well, let's go through the top 10 first, Matt, and then we'll talk about our breaking news. Again, these are from our friends at NUIC Football. Again, go visit them. Always doing terrific work. And we proudly use their 8-man poll for this week and every week. So the week 6 8-man poll is as follows. Not a lot of change here either. Amboy remains at number 1, Milledgeville at 2, Polo at 3, St. Thomas More at 4, Ridgewood at 5, South Beloit at 6, Martinsville 7, South Fork at 8, West Prairie at 9, and Cisna Park at 10. Also, same schools receiving votes this week. Received them last week as well. Flanagan, Cornell, Woodland received votes as well as Prairie City. Should we let the cat out of the bag? I guess we should, huh?
Go for it, man.
All right. Well, even our friend Jim Morrow doesn't know this yet, so we're going to release it exclusively here tonight. Saturday, 2:00 kickoff in south of Beloit. The Sobos will host undefeated St. Thomas More. Again, a 2:00 kickoff on Saturday. And Matt Lang, I will be there.
Well, I tell you what, I think right now, there's probably I'm kind of telling you what I'm going to talk about here later, but there's 3 or 4 teams, I think, in 8-man right now that are really kind of rising to the top. And Nathan Watson does a great job at St. Thomas More.
Yep.
They're playing some great defense, and we'll talk about them a little bit later about this matchup. I think it's going to be a battle of wills. In 8-man, Pat Elder and Ridgewood just suffered their second straight defeat, and they literally were by the same score, like a 48-44, 46-42 game. I talked to former football coach Greg King from Sterling High School.
Man.
He is an Amboy graduate, went to Augustana, and we talked at the Illinois game, the Florida Atlantic Illinois game. He said they went over there to watch Elder play. He's like, Amboy is big and they're physical. I think if you had 4 storylines in 8-man, and I'll talk about this later in the new reports, Amboy is the big bully on the block. STM and Beloit, that's going to be a lot of fun. And then there's some other sleepers too.
Yeah, I'm just excited to go cover an 8-man game. I've never been to one in person. I've watched a little bit on TV, state final-wise from Iowa, but outside of that, looking forward to heading up to South Beloit. Just looking forward to cover it and see the differences, and we'll have plenty next week for sure.
Will
again,
will you drive up? Will you have a Tesla CD? Will you put Tesla in your CD?
I'll be rocking. There's no doubt, because it's about a 2 hour, a little over 2 hour drive from where I'm at. It's actually a good drive because it's literally straight up 39, which
there
is
you
perfect.
go.
I do that I tell the story. My daughter went to Platteville, so I used to make that drive, 39 was at 20,
Yep.
and then you take 20 into Wisconsin. So yeah, I've made that drive many, many times. So it's good. It's not terribly far for me. I know it's a different story for you, but for me, it's not terribly far of a drive. Get to go watch some great football, stop back, maybe stop in the Calb on the way home, maybe see my friends over at Fatty's on Saturday night, get something to eat, get a little Cajun potato salad. And yeah, supposed to be great weather on Saturday as well. It's supposed to be like 80 or low 80s. And
you'll see two of the better teams, 8-man. Yeah. I will be watching Jim Morrow when he comes down here on October 7th to take on Milford and Clint Schwartz. Clint, along with Ted Alston, probably two of the godfathers of the 8-man in terms of like giving it a name, giving it some star power, giving it some validity. So that'll be a good game, October 7th. But
so I will cover this game just like I cover every other game. I will have photos.
You'll see good football, man. I'll talk more about it later.
I will have photos. I will have video highlights. Those photos and videos will be for free. And so you don't have to subscribe. That'll be free to everybody that wants to see it. And I'll do my post scouting reports and everything else I do for every other 8A through whatever A. We'll do it upright.
That means a lot. Let me tell you, that means a lot to Jim. And I know down here with Matt Daniels at the News Gazette and just everybody, WCIA and everybody, St. Thomas More. And, they deserve, they were for a while, they didn't know what they were going to do. They didn't know if they could play football because of the numbers. There's all sorts of various reasons. I'll talk more about that later, but this is going to be a good game. You're going to see a really good game.
Yeah, I'm excited to go check it out for sure. All right, well, we've wrapped that portion of the show up. I know you want to get to your new report. I guess we're calling it the less lame 50-yard line report. Sure, we'll go with that. Until a better name strikes me, we'll roll with that for now.
Okay, 50-yard
line. So let's start. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think you can kind of carry me a little bit on 4A. We'll go 4A, and then we'll go down to 1A, 4A, 3A, 2A1, because I think as we get on to 1A, I got a little bit more information.
All right, fire away.
So 4A, for the 50-yard line report here, we're always going to kind of talk about a front runner, a big story. I still think over the years, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Derek Leonard in Rochester until someone knocks Derek Leonard and Rochester kind of out of the picture. Now, they haven't been in the state championship game for a while, and, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. But I just wanted to, I want to give a little shout out to them. Not that they necessarily need it, but they still are the top dog in 4A as far as I'm concerned. You can add on that.
A team that is going to be considered one of the front runners from the very start. We talked about IC Catholic Prep. Very, very tough remaining schedule. And what I think I talked about this last week. I'll talk a little bit about it again. What's been very impressive of what they've been able to do is not even the wins they have, but who they've been beating. They just beat Marist, an 8A team. And this is a 4A IC Catholic team. Their schedule changed considerably this year. They're in the Catholic League. They're playing crossover games against much larger schools, much larger rosters. The point being, what I'm very interested to see, and again, I have some communication with some people at IC Catholic and great guys. Haven't heard anything. I haven't heard a whole lot about injuries. And well, my concern with them going into the season was playing this type of schedule. Mm-hmm. Physically, where are you going to be week 8, week 9, week 10? We don't know. I don't know. I haven't really seen or heard much from there, so I'm assuming that's good news. But that's something I think everyone's got to keep in the back of their mind a little bit because, man, I'm telling you, you're pounding and going against, and believe me, IC Catholic has proven everything the last handful of years. They're as good as anybody. But again, we've always talked about, well, what's the biggest difference? Well, it's different when you're playing 8A teams that are full starters, one way only. You're platooning kids and bringing in personnel packages. It's a lot. They've handled it incredibly well so far. So that's what I'm looking for the next few weeks to see how that plays out. The other thing I wanted to mention is talked about St. Lawrence, and they're another one where they've got some tough remaining games left. But if they can kind of ride it out and wind up as an 8-1, 7-2, they could wind up being a real dangerous team to watch in the north side of the bracket for sure in 4A.
Yeah, and I think, like last year we had that meat grinder in 3A. You might have a little bit of a meat grinder in 4A in the north, this year. And I'll talk about another team that obviously has been there. But I'll just say this in terms of IC, they're a well-oiled, fast machine. When you see them play, it's just very fast. It's very ferocious. It's very just well executed, and so if they're executing well against this competition and there's no injuries and they're not turning the ball over, they're not making self-inflicted wounds,
you're going to be hard to beat.
They're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. Again, I'm not anointing them. I'm not handing them.
No, I'm not either. I'm
not, but the facts are the facts. I'm not anointing them or giving them a trophy or saying, hey, here's your Willy Wonka ticket to get into the quarterfinals and semifinals. But the bottom line is the bottom line. If they're playing good ball and they're executing, by the time they get to week 10 and week 11, they might put a punch on somebody real hard.
Yeah. No doubt. All right. 3A, one thing I wanted to mention real quick.
Hey, real quick, though, Tim, I wanted to tell you about 4A, I wanted to talk about the sleeper, and you talked about them. I just think Carterville, you keep mentioning them. Good football team. They're my sleeper team. I think they're going to be really tough in the South. And here's the thing with them. They just overcame a big game against St. Joe Ogden, where they were down in the fourth quarter, and they scored. They put 7 points on the board in the fourth quarter to win that game 32-28. So, tip your hat off to Carterville. And then I think a team that's lurking in 4A that we don't talk about because Mike Knoll's just so darn good, and that's Richmond Burton.
Yeah, we just take them for granted.
Get them up north. It's going to be a meat grinder.
We take them for granted. There's no doubt about it. They are the real deal. It's funny because I see this all the time. Somebody from, I forget what school it was. It was a bigger school. I've got Richmond Burton in my Chicagoland top 30 this week. And they're like, Richmond Burton's kind of a small school. They really belong in a top 30. I'm like, oh, yeah. You want to argue with me about Richmond Burton? I'm ready to go to war with you right now to tell you how good this team is. Go ask Joliet Catholic. Go ask all these teams that have played Richmond Burton. Go ask Providence. They'll all tell you, hey, that team's as good as anybody we played all year long. It's that just grind it down physical style that they play, and they play it as well as anyone here.
You can just kind of almost compare them to kind of not that they're boring because they run the wing T, and I'm biased towards wing T,
right?
But it's just so consistent. It's almost like the high school version.
Well, I just saw Cary Grove and Prairie Ridge last Friday, same thing, like a machine, both of them.
Yeah, and I would say like a Richmond Burton and how Coach Knoll is and his preparation, it's almost like a high school version of Iowa Hawkeyes. Every year it's just going to be physical. Yeah. It's not going to be fancy, but it's going to be very effective.
Yep, no doubt. All right,
and they're probably going to score more points than Iowa.
Yeah, well, that doesn't seem to be too hard lately. First of all, 3A real quick, and I meant to do this earlier in the podcast. Congratulations to Jeff Boyer. Last week was named the Chicago Bears High School Coach of the Week. I'll be honest, I'm kind of shocked that hasn't happened before. And I'm someone on the media committee, so I'm as much at fault to anybody. But my God, what he's done at Byron's been incredible, and just it's again.
Well,
we mentioned Richmond Burton, and Byron's kind of another one that we take for granted.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But bottom line is the Richmond Burtons and the Byrons of the world, they're so darn good at what they do. And Jeff is so soft-spoken. I mean, just over the years as I was coaching and wanting to get more about know more about his toss sweep, and he runs 7 plays and runs a power 2 pass right down the middle for a touchdown once a game. And he's just so nice. His family's nice to my family. I got to get to know Sean Constantine, and he just gives me all the information I want. That I think we take him for granted. He's just a great coach, and not only that, he's a better person. So, Byron obviously
throw that out there.
Good guy.
All right, let's go 3A.
3A, I think obviously something we got to talk about in 3A. This is just a story. I think coming out of the gate, front runner. We're looking at St. Joe and Olympia, and we're talking about Sparty Party Part 2. And you think about those 2 teams right there, the Spartans, both of those, Olympia's going to have a huge test this Friday night. It's against Maroa. That's going to be really interesting. And St. Joe's coming off a tough loss to Carterville. So we'll see how the Spartans in 3A, and whether those 2 teams are going to be going 3A North or 3A South, we don't know. But I think that's a big story. A sleeper in 3A is DeCoin. And I will just tell you this. They're undefeated, but if you look at their schedule down the road in week 8, they take on a team by the name of Nashville.
Yeah.
In week 9, they take on Murfreesboro. There is a meat grinder down there developing with a lot of those teams, so we're going to see what happens.
So they could sneak in. They can wind up as a 6-3 and still be a very good team.
Yeah, 7-2 and very good. And then my teams that are lurking, you can add to this. You brought one of these teams up several times. But I'm going to go with the 2 M's, Montini, and then Murfreesboro. Murfreesboro, again, listen to their schedule as they end the season in week 7, 8, 9. They have Harrisburg in week 7. They have Carterville in week 8, and they got DeCoin in week 9.
Yeah.
Obviously, Montini is going, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler against everybody and beating everybody up, but also taking some punches. So a lot of these teams, they're going to take some bruises. They're going to take some punches, but they'll be ready by week 10.
Yeah, I'm the more I look at 3A, the more I think the fuzzy IHSA geography is going to be thrilling to see how they come up with it.
Sure.
I mean, does Wilmington go north? Do they go south? I'm just looking at some of these schools and thinking, man,
St. Joe could go north. They've gone north in the past.
Right. So someone's going to get sent somewhere that's not going to be really good.
I can remember talking to the late great Dick Duvall about that too, and I was just like, do you have a preference? Where you go? And he's like, you'd think we would just stay south of the Mason-Dixon line and be a South team. He's like, but we've had to go to Wilmington. We've had to go to Coal City,
Yeah. Yep. No doubt about it. Okay. 3A, we're done. 2A?
Yep. I think in 2A, it's going to be a big battle. I keep talking about with Josh Joseph. He's the Lane Kiffin of high school football. He has Cade Maurer at quarterback. They're going to be really, really tough to beat, I think, on Friday night. They always seem like they pull out a trick or something, make a big play. They're beating everybody, It's going to be interesting. They're the top dog in 2A, but it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. That's my front runner. That's the top story in 2A. In the sleeper category, I got Knoxville, just a hard-nosed running football team. And then the team that's kind of lurking is a team that last year was kind of put to the forefront, put on the platform as this team that was getting a lot of attention. And it was because of their running back, the Fagan kid, and I'm talking about Arthur Lovington. So here's a team, and the Fagan kid, I saw him play on Saturday and did a nice job.
I was going to mention he did play.
And he did play, and he's big, he's ferocious, he's really adjusting well. But here's a team like Arthur Lovington, they're 5-0, and they you could maybe
it's impressive coming off of what they graduated.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily a one-man team anymore. They're kind of a well-balanced team. They're not relying on one guy. They're 5-0. Last year, when they end up taking on Johnson City, Fagan got hurt early in the game, and then they just hear that all off season that, hey, we were a one-man team, and You know, they got Jace Parsons and Landon Waldrop are their 1A and 1B on offense. And they have a good running attack. It's a wing T tap attack. You know, and then they have a really big offensive lineman in Jake Ty. You know, he's a big guy. He's a big road blocker. So we're going to see. We're going to see what they do. You know, I just think it's going to be really interesting. They're 5-0. They just beat Toledo Cumberland 14-6. So it's a big win. And their JV team at Arthur Lovington is 5-0 too. So people are happy. They kind of, you know, they're forgetting about last year, although that was great. And now it's kind of a refresh, a reset. And here they are getting ready to go into 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Yep. Okay. Marion Central Catholic for me in 2A. They continue to put up an insane amount of points and yards offensively. Kalmathenia, again, Northern Iowa commits, just putting up massive numbers. And we talked about Betancourt, the tight end, and there's some really, really big weapons in that offense. And you know how that goes. Sometimes you can just overwhelm people. Sometimes you shut them down for a few series and they're done. So they're just a very intriguing team to me to watch out, maybe as a potential sleeper down in that part. They still got some tough games ahead of them. So I don't know how they're going to wind up finishing, but they should get in and be a real dangerous, maybe 6-3 kind of team there. My thoughts a little bit there on 2A and Matt. 1A, I know you've got plenty of thoughts there as well.
Well, you know, we haven't talked about them, and we're going to talk about them now. You know, I mean, the front runner and, you know, the main team is the main team, and the main team has always been the main team in 1A, and it's Lane and Winslow. However, they have a very big challenge ahead of them this weekend against Dupec. So that's going to be interesting. You know, you got two undefeated teams going at it. You know, and Lena Winslow has Gage Dunker, you know, as a running back. You know, he has over 70 carries for about 700 yards, 12 touchdowns. And, you know, just throw a little shout out to Dupec, which I didn't really bring them into the forefront of this conversation. But, you know, they're a good football team. Cooper Hoffman can run the ball. He can pass the ball. He's their quarterback, dual threat. They got Jalen Nord at a receiver. They also have a kid by the name of Drew Willing at another receiver. They're going to be tough to beat. I mean, this is not going to be a pushover for Lane and Winslow. And we're going to see. You know, we're talking about this collision course with Forreston down the road in week 9. But I think this game, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens because Dupec has shown and proved that they can stick their chest out and go against the best of them at times. So it's going to be interesting to see.
How cool is that game being week 9?
Well, you
awesome.
know, it's a collision course. You know, between Auburn and Alabama. I mean, it really is. I mean, Georgia and Alabama. I mean, it's, you know, Forreston and obviously the whole conference and the notoriety of the conference. It's physical football. It's going to be cold. It's going to be sloppy. They're playing on grass up there. It's going to be really interesting. My sleeper team in 1A is a team by the Salt Fork Storm and Coach Hageman. So here's a team that had some shutouts in the last 3 or 4 weeks. They weren't giving up any points. They're beating people 40-0, 47-0. And then they take on Bismarck Henning and Coach Dodd, and that game goes right down to the wire. That was at Salt Fork, and it came right down to the last minute. Bismarck scores to get within 1, and they miss the extra point, and they lose 14-13. So, again, you know, you think about the Vermilion County over here by Danville, Bismarck, Westville, Guy Goodlove, you know, you go Coach Hageman. We need to do some research on Moments because Moments is in that Vermilion County. And Moments is like either hot or they're cold. This year they're hot. So I'll need to get some more information on that. The lurking teams are my HOIC teams. I talked about Hayworth last week with Coach Albaugh. They are now 4-1. They're probably going to end up 6-3 or 7-2. As they kind of unfold the season, they're going to be taking on Leroy in week 7. And then Leroy and Gibson City are playing in week 8. So between those 3 teams right there, one of those teams, probably all 3 of them are going to be in the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see how they all unfold and how they all beat each other up. Leroy has Bo Zalesnik, which is Coach Zalesnik's son. He's waited his whole life to coach Bo. Bo knows football. He's a heck of a dynamic running quarterback. And then with Gibson City, their whole team is circled around Aiden Sankin. So they're 4-1. Gibson City's 4-1. They lost earlier in the year 16-0 to DMAC. They played that game with some injured players, and they've just really played better football. They handled Fisher this past weekend, and watch out for Gibson City and just see how they kind of develop. However, Gibson City has a road game here against Forreston up in Forreston coming up.
Couple things. Speaking of Melvin, Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, Aiden Lowry playing quite a bit for Illinois as well.
Scored a touchdown on a cluster toss sweep, and I sent the text message to Mike Allen, and that knucklehead had just left the stadium. And so Aiden didn't score on that. He had like 15 yards, and he hit the ground. And then the next play, they ran an ISO to him. And what's nice about that is Coach Bielema kind of told Aiden Lowry, like, hey, you're going to score today. I have a feeling you're going to score. So,
by the way, I don't know if you realize this or not. Remember we had a little problem connecting earlier?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why that was?
Why was that?
Do you know that we've been live? We're live right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's not live. It's memorized.
And we have an audience watching. Hello, people that shouldn't be watching right now.
There you go.
So you don't have a problem doing this live?
I love it.
Oh, then we'll start doing it I'll just advertise it.
Let's do it. Let's get the dog involved,
Oh, we can take DMs from people. We can, just like the JOL show that I do, same thing.
I just, I'm sorry now. I'm not sure. I mean, you kind of have the boxer mentality there with that little thing right there. I mean,
come on.
Here's the deal. I watched a really good documentary last night on Sugar Ray and Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran, and I'm just in the box.
I've seen that. It's very good. Yeah, I've seen it.
The steely eyes of Roberto Duran, like he scared me.
Yeah.
Hands of Stone.
He just stuck around a little too long. Duran.
I think he ate a little too much too.
Yeah, but he just stayed a couple years too long.
The documentary was called No Moss. So when you're done, when you're done, they just say no moss.
Very good. So yeah, what else you got? I think that's going to do it.
Okay, so the 50-yard line report, that was the 4 classes. Real quick on the 8-man.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to tell you that I just think Nathan Watson is an interesting character coach. I don't think a lot of people know about Nathan. He good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's been around a couple of different schools. I know what he did. Didn't he coach in one of the Champaign schools for a while?
He was at Urbana. He is the last coach to take them to the playoffs. They were 8-1.
Yeah, I met him at a coaches convention, so I've talked to him a little bit.
They were 8-1, and they were 9-1, and then they ended up losing to Morris in the second round that year. He was at Arcola for a while. That was kind of a short-lived tenure there. Nathan's good. He's a good football mind, and they have Peace Bumba there in terms of their dynamic playmaker. But I think defensively is kind of where they hang their hat at, and it's going to be really interesting. When I talk about how you kind of have some strategic kind of things going on, I would kind of compare this like a Gus Malzahn Auburn team going against a Nick Saban defensive team. You're going to have two battled wits there going at it, because Jim's going to sit there like he's, just staring off into space, and he's just got 1,000 things going on in his head. And I just think I'm really jealous that you're going to that game. I'm just happy for you, because I think you're going to really see something neat. But again, I'll just say out of the gate, Amboy's your team. I think your sleeper team is St. Thomas More and South Fork. And then I think a team that's just kind of lurking is probably Ridgewood and South Beloit, although South Beloit's climbing the ranks. I think this game Saturday says a lot about 8-man.
Yeah. I just texted Peace Bumba and let him know I'm coming to his game.
There you go.
I haven't heard back yet, but great kid. I've been talking to Peace for a couple of years now, so look forward to that for sure.
He passes the litmus test. It's going to be really interesting to see it.
Yeah.
That's a long trip, playing that on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Stretch your legs when you get about Rochelle, I guess,
Oh, come on. Not my first rodeo, dude. You know that. So, all right. I think that's going to do it for the first.
Just walk away. Do the no moss.
The first secret live third and lang. Unintentional, but here we go. So we'll go live next week. We'll see if you can handle a live audience.
Let's do it, man.
I'll have that fixed. I'm hoping to have it fixed by tomorrow, but hopefully I'll have it fixed by I certainly will have it done by next week at this time. So we'll deal with that. But yeah, looking forward to being up at South Beloit. I'm gonna text our friend now and let him know I'm coming, and I'll have plenty to report back. So I'm excited.
Definitely. I want a boxing picture on my profile.
You go away. I'll come out. Like a guitar. I'll punch you. I'll punch you next time I see you. How does that sound?
Hey, you need to go to the corner, get a towel around your neck, cut me, Mick.
All right, for this goofball, Matt Lang, I'm the toothless Edgy Tim. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you watching. Hey, everyone live watching. Thanks for watching, even though
go watch the football game.
We didn't think we were live, but
I don't think we I don't think we messed it up.
I don't think so either. That's why I don't think I'll ever tell you we're going to be live. And that way you don't have to worry about it. So, all right, for Matt Lang, I'm Edgy Tim. Thanks, everybody. Have a great